Welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and live we have Dr. Angela Celeste May, our resident mental health expert. She is a clinically trained forensic psychologist, along with an accomplished musician. She's an author. She does lots of wonderful things. And whenever she's on, she always gives us lots of nuggets on how to maintain our mental health. So welcome, Dr. Angela Celeste May. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here again with you, Kim. It's always a pleasure. I enjoy your show so much, and you bring such positive content every show that you do.
Thank you. And so today, let's get right to it. We are talking about how to take negative thoughts and patterns and turn them positive. Okay, so I don't know about you. At the beginning of the year, when we said Happy New Year 2020, and we were all excited, and then all of a sudden it was COVID-19, it was like, oh. And then schools were canceled, and it was like, oh. And then on top of that, it really got serious because we saw Ahmaud Arbery murdered on film, which was jarring. And then we saw George Floyd, which was jarring. We heard about Breonna Taylor. We heard about Rayshard Brooks, and we saw a video for him. And there have been countless others. And we watched as our nation erupted in unrest. And it happened in Metro Detroit. It happened in LA. It happened in Atlanta, in DC, and so many other cities. And then we saw around the world people united around Black Lives Matter. And there's been so much that it just seems overwhelming. And I know a lot of people have talked to me about having anxiety, having bouts of depression because they're not sure, and people are nervous. And, you know, we've heard everything from there are going to be food shortages to grocery stores are running out of food. You can't find paper towel, toilet paper, Lysol. People are hoarding things. Gun sales went up. And on top of all of that, as if that was not enough, we have a national election for president. And it is ugly. It is ugly.
Very.
And so, all of that encapsulated in that beginning, how would you tell someone to not think negatively about things right now? Because we always talk about hope. And on this show, hope is always where we should keep our focus. But how do you, in the midst of all of that, tell someone to continue to hope?
Well, of course, at this time, we've also lost a couple of our greats in the civil rights struggle.
Yes.
Of course, John Lewis is top of mind. And that's one thing that he always said is never lose hope. You know, he always said, never lose hope. And I think, I know that looking at our past, what we've come through, listening to our, those who went before us, Congressman Lewis is now an ancestor, listening to, you know, those voices, our elders, when they say that, they're saying that from experience. I know for myself, I probably have two go-to things that come from the way I was raised. And they're my anchors. One is, like my mom says, God knew about this yesterday. So it's this, as a Christian, and with an active spiritual life for myself, that's the first thing I lean on. So if any anxiety starts to like bubble up a little bit, or we're gonna get toilet tissue or whatever the case is, like my first thing is, okay, wait a minute. It's that take a step back, breathe, exhale. Wait a minute. Lord will take care of it. Lord always takes care of it when I kind of like step out of the way, you know.
Exactly.
And so how do you step out of the way? I think the first thing is it's the self-talk. Negative thoughts, negative talk, they're like putting roadblocks up in front of ourselves. And our thinking patterns are called patterns for a reason. They're habits. And so they may be challenging to change, but they can be changed. So I find that the first thing is I start with my thinking. So if I've developed, over time, the habit of, well, wait a minute. Okay, well, let me pause. Well, not necessarily so. Okay, wait, let's see. That pausing, that thought process of, let me consciously slow my mind down. Let me slow my mind down, slow my thinking down. And in that moment of slowing down, then we're able to breathe, concentrate on our breathing, which brings the stress down and then the anxiety down. Number one, it helps us to think more clearly and therefore begin to, hear in our brain solutions. Calmly begin to see, okay, what are my resources? What might I need to do? And prioritize. Okay, wait a minute. What do I need to do first? Okay, first let's check the inventory of the toilet paper. Let's go check, okay? And then, okay, what's the money saying? Okay, let's find out who might have, that step by step. So definitely leaning on for myself, my faith, and I encourage other people to lean on, if you have an active faith life, lean on that. And not but, and definitely, as Congressman Lewis always said, and many others who have been through the struggle and struggles we've come through before. So, keep our eyes on the prize, maintain hope, all of that. So that's the one thing, leaning on my faith, my belief, that maintains hopefulness for me, and I encourage other people to do. And then the other thing is looking to the past and recognizing that while people are saying, we've never been here before, we've never seen this before, we may not have ever seen this before, but there's nothing new under the sun, meaning we may not have seen this particular pandemic or type of thing before, but we do know people, not even just Black folks, like people know struggle, know times in which they felt that they would never get out of what it was. And then you look back and say, oh, I forgot about that. That was 10 years ago. I did come through it. So that reminds us that we're resilient, that we have options. And I think that's one of the scariest parts that really increases the anxiety. Feeling trapped, feeling that we have no options and, no place to turn, no place to go. Some most definitely have more access to resources than others. There's no doubt about that. And of course, we know that that's a part of the protesting and the struggle. And that's one of the things that COVID-19 has brought to the forefront. For those who didn't know, oftentimes people of color do have less resources. So that's definitely real. I certainly don't want to come off sounding like that's, all in someone's head. That's definitely real. Everyone doesn't have the same access. But someone said this recently, and I can't remember who it was. I was watching something, and they were saying, you might have the change though to take the bus to go from point A to point B, whatever that may be. If it's to get to a shelter or a food pantry or what, it's still a struggle. But just to think through, instead of I have no options, okay, what options do I have? And maybe there's only 2 or 1.5, but what can I do with those? Thank goodness we do live in a time where there are organizations who that's their whole mission, as we know, and many of them are struggling too, but they're saying if we're here. If you don't have access to the internet, maybe look in the newspaper, find our number. We're here, like I said, food pantries, shelters, whatever the case. I thought about Katrina as I was talking. I was thinking about, just some of these things that we just, oh my goodness, you wonder how people make it through. And just the resilience of a people to find ways, find answers, reach out or make a connection or a network of some kind that can give that support. So I think definitely that's the other thing I would say. The top, not the other, there are other things, but the top 2 ways that I find are anchors for me and that I encourage other people. Lean on your faith and look to, if not this particular struggle, other struggles that we have gone through, that other people have gone through, how did they make it through? You know, what were the things that they did? Never giving up, never losing hope. And I think also realizing that the answer may take time, but you keep trying and you try again and you keep, you know, pushing and pushing until you can break through or make some connection. So I would say those are the top two things.
Those are great points. And just to add on to that, I always remember, because my grandmother said this to me and she's not with us anymore. When 9/11 happened, I remember I felt and I thought that the world was ending. It was the worst thing that I'd ever seen. And to see it live on television in color and
Yeah.
see it minute by minute playback of everything that was happening. And I was in downtown Detroit. And so we thought there was a plane coming because we were across the street from GM and everybody said GM was going to be attacked. And I just remember thinking, I'm going to die today. That was my thought. And when we got through the day and I got home and I called my grandmother because I had to talk to her to make sure she was okay, she was like, well, what's wrong with you? And I said, well, didn't you see what happened? And she said, yeah, baby, I saw it. But she said, we're okay. You're okay. And I said, how are you so kind? I said, this happened. The world has changed. She said, the world always changes. My grandmother was born in 1920. She had been through the Great Depression. They had been through 2 world wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Afghanistan, Iraq. They had been through Desert Storm, all of that. But my grandmother told me a story and she said, let me tell you about Pearl Harbor. And we talked about that story. And I said, so what do you do when something bad like that happens? She said, you continue on.
That's right.
You just keep moving. You don't have the right to stop because you're still here. You have to continue to move on. And so, you know, I encourage people to, again, think about it. Like you said, 10 years ago, oh, I came through such and such, or God delivered me from this, or God delivered me from that. And I've had to do that where I've leaned on my faith, where I've been sort of shaky. And I'm like, okay, God, you've gotten us through some sticky things before. I know that you will get us through this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, your grandmother, she knew what she was talking about.
She did.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. One of the things also I like to say is so my grandmother used to say, and she wasn't the only one, you know, this is not too big for God. You know, it's big to us, but this is
right.
He can handle, you know, you know this, you know. So yeah, absolutely. And it's so easy. Like I said, those habits of thinking. Your grandmother, my grandmother, you know, they developed a lifetime of there's a habit of thinking, and it's like anything else. Building those thought habits, building those spiritual muscles. You know, it comes with time, it comes with practice, but it also comes with being tested as well, and practicing that. And we know with any kind of test that you come through, sometimes it's the hardest, most painful things that really build those muscles, you know, that your grandmother had. So yeah, absolutely. That it's a slippery slope. So I think that we have to monitor ourselves a little bit, and that's not even in the trying times, but just day to day. Just, you know, to catch yourself, to practice letting things go, to practice when little stressors come up. Well, you know, this will be taken care of. Let's just look and see. This the habit of that, because it is a slippery slope, and it's so subtle the way we can start to, like, you know, go negative, and you know, if I hear myself saying that, I'm like, oh wait a minute, God, yes, you know, just bring it back. It is a habit. It'll be fine. And there's also that self-fulfilling prophecy, you know, that's speaking into existence. It sounds very, you know, for any of your viewers who may be listening and saying there are those who will say, oh, yeah, absolutely, I know where you're coming from. But of course, we have diversity out here. So there will be those who say, that's all, supernatural and everything. But give me some concrete.
Exactly.
But actually, research has shown that self-fulfilling prophecy, what we say, what the old folks say about speaking into existence, it really has, sometimes science has to catch up with what the old folks already knew.
Yes.
And, so for example, neurologists and neuropsychologists, I had a little subspecialty in the neuropsychology as a doctorate student. And some of that research has shown that it's like a chicken and egg thing, that the way you behave and the things that you say impact your thinking, and your thinking impacts, the way you behave. So some of that neurological research has actually shown that what you say, the words you speak and think literally impact the neurons in your brain, which are the cells, that make up the brain. They literally impact how they develop and the way, just the structure almost really of the brain. So the old folks knew it. They knew it generations ago. Because, and you can point to the power of that. And I think one of the what can I say? One of the easiest ways to see that for anyone is, how we say a lot of times, it's very good advice to say, well, write down your dreams and your thought. Like, what would you like to accomplish? And, the vision boards, that's the newest incarnation. But it's nothing new under the sun. Well, write it down. Go back to it. Haven't we done that about different things? Go back to it in 10 years. Go back to it in 5 years. Go back to it in 6 months. And it's amazing, the shifts. Some of those things we do very consciously, and then other things that just kind of, moves into place. And I'll tell you a story that I share with my psych classes sometimes. And then I'm going to connect that to a passage from my book in terms of thinking, and how it impacts us. My mom, well, actually, I'll do it the other way around. Let me read this passage.
Okay.
So this is a passage from my book, Freedom. And this comes from the chapter, which is chapter 6. And chapter 6 deals with the main themes that came out of my research. And there were 7 main themes, and they all had to do with how do you get from, well, first of all, what is life like when you're stuck? It's called freedom. What is the experience of living without negative self-imposed limitations? So the research took people, a variety of people from different backgrounds, and looked at all of them were in their own definitions stuck in different ways, whether it was career, personal, just their own, development, self-esteem, whatever it may be. So there were 7 themes that took us through, well, what does it look like? How do you feel? How do you interact? What is your thought pattern like when you're, not free, quote unquote, all the way through to what are the things that helped you get free from that? And then what was it like on the other side? So in this chapter, there is, this is on page 82. And this has to do with looking at the results or consequences, as I called it, of living in a limited way. And by limited, it just means not fully living to your own full potential. And the things we tell ourselves in terms of negative thinking, or, what we can't do, that slippery slope of negative thought. So there were a few of them, a little handful, like 3 or 4. Results of living in a limited way. That's Roman numeral 3 on this page. And the first one is emotions. It impacts our emotions. And so this is the passage. There are many consequences to locking oneself into a negative and stagnant mode of thinking, living, and behaving that takes its toll over time. And just that sentence, I think, really speaks to a lot of things. It takes its toll over time. Sometimes we think it's just in the moment. Oh, I'm only referring to this thing. This is what. But in reality, it is like a virus. It contaminates everything. Doesn't it? It contaminates everything. the way we think of ourselves, the way we treat ourselves and others, our expectations get limited then, and as a result, there are things we won't try for, and therefore we never know if we can achieve them. All of that. So getting back to my mom, I would tell which is true, I tell people all the time, but I would tell my psych classes that well, first of all, she just had her 90th birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Mom.
Yeah, happy birthday, July 5th. And she's just, strong as an ox. She had blessed with good health. She literally takes like a baby aspirin and a cholesterol med, like that's it. She had a stroke at mid 80s.
Okay.
And so it affected her right side. And that's getting stronger. But other than that, God is great. She continues
Amen.
very well. But the thing about my mom is she never, ever, allow me to repeat, ever, the woman never gets sick.
Okay.
And healthy as anything now. And like everybody else around her would get sick, she doesn't get sick. So when my mom would sniffle, everybody in the family like, sniffle? Like, she doesn't catch a cold, none of that. And so my family, not my family, my students would ask, well, okay, how did she do that? Because what I would say is, which is true, she taught me how to do that. Okay, well, what does she do? So she's a professional. She's an amazing teacher. She's a concert pianist, musician, and everything. But she's not a psychologist. But we know our elders are psychologists.
Yeah.
The real ones. So,
exactly
right. So she said something that I took, and I said she's absolutely right. What she said was she talked about how the body language and how we would collapse into, like, if you get a sniffle and you think you might be catching cold, you claim it. It's like, oh, I must be, and you notice, okay, already your shoulders are forward. I must be getting sick, this kind of, and so then it's the difference between, yes, take care of yourself, double check that you're healthy and well, and embracing that, completely. And so I'm sick now. So her approach, which I think is a very healthy approach, and I've seen it work countless times, and it's been beneficial to me, is not to acknowledge, not to deny, not to not acknowledge that we're going through stress, not to not acknowledge that there's struggle, that this coronavirus is real, and all of the racial unrest, that these are real issues, but to develop the habit of name it, acknowledge it, and then immediately turn to, what do I want to see better? What do I want to see changed? When my mom would start to feel a little something, she'd say, oh, wait, what is this? Ham and vinegar. Ham and vinegar. Wait, go, give me some tea. She was like, bam, that's gone. Let's just, and she's absolutely right. So I find, and I'm sure, Kim, you see this yourself in people and in yourself, the things that and that's part of the issue, is we pick and choose. If we did it more across the board, the things that we, proclaim, because we have more power than we think we do, things that we proclaim, and that comes from, again, the habit of positive thinking, what are the solution-based thinking, rather than just dwelling on the negative. People who are resilient tend to begin to consider the positive possibilities, the solutions, quicker. They seem to get, they may or may not arrive. It doesn't mean that they arrive at the answer super quickly. These things take time. Our freedom fighters, our John Lewis's, that's one of the things that they would say about, him as an example, and many others. And he talked about the way he was trained. Know that it may be a long road, and recognize, what that might look like. But this is a key thing: celebrate the victories along the way also. Because then that just feeds, it feeds into motivation to keep going. It's rewarding. It kind of like rewards, and again, self-fulfilling. If I think positive and I see some movement over time, it helps to feed into more positive thinking, and And again, we don't mean positive thinking in terms of pretending that, you know, that there's not struggle, but positive as far as we can get through this. How do we go about it? What's the best, you know, way to do it? It's, you know, it's been done before. All of those things.
You know, it was funny. I was listening to you talk about your mom and being sick. And I'm sure you have the same issue. You're like, I am too busy to be sick. I am not getting sick. And what do? You know, you have your concoction. Mine is zinc, and I dose up on vitamin C, and I drink orange juice, and I do lemon and tea, or I will just do hot water and lemon with a little bit of honey. And just drink that to help cope because I usually get a lot of sore throats. That's gotta start. And so I know, and if my head starts to, I'm like, oh, that's my sinuses. Let me take a pill. I think part of the problem too, when we talk about negative thoughts and negative patterns, we take ourselves out of the equation because we don't take care of ourselves.
Yes.
And so when you were saying earlier, sometimes we have too many options, or we don't have any options at all, and we feel trapped. And we don't know what to do. And sometimes I think it's just an inner question of, if I'm supposed to do this, do I deserve it? Is this what I should do? Because I haven't prayed about it. I haven't gone to God about it. So I'm operating in my own. And the whole idea of where your mom said, you're shrinking into that code. A lot of times when things happen, that's what we do. Exactly. If someone says something bad about us, someone rejects us, we automatically, it's almost like we put that on ourselves and we accept it, whether it's true or not.
Exactly.
And I know lots of people are because I've heard this, they're in relationships, and a lot of people are like, oh, is this the person I married? We in quarantine, and I don't know. I'm frustrated. I'm tired. And this person has to go, because there's this meme that's funny to me. They're like, okay, this is season 1 of quarantine. Can we switch husbands? I'm like, well, who are you switching husbands with? But
right.
But you hear people say this. So, a lot of it are things that were swept under the rug, that weren't addressed, that now, because we are all at home, all around each other, that all these things are coming to light. And so we're sitting here going, okay, every day there's something new. But I'm still looking at my house going, okay, he's still doing whatever it was that got on my nerves. My kids are doing whatever it was that I told them not to do. I'm like, all of that was there before. And I told someone this a couple of days ago. I said, the one thing that I have noticed about being in quarantine and the pandemic is that this is a time for all of us to grow,
absolutely,
strengthen our faith.
That's right.
And develop some things that can help us to cope. Because absolutely. I'm not saying that the next season of the year, we still got 6 more months to go. I'm a little bit scared because when we had Murder Hornets, I said, Murder Hornets? What's going on?
I know. I know. Like for real. Like really?
Right. Right. I was like, see, I didn't do that. I was like, oh God. I said, Murder Hornets, really? I said, okay, God, if you about to come, because it's been a couple of rainstorms for the thunder and lightning. I know. I stood by the window like, okay, I'm listening for my name. Do I hear my name? But we can laugh about it, which is a good thing. But absolutely, so many people are just stuck. And so we have a few more minutes, but I want to talk about personal relationships. So there are people that are struggling in business with relationships because they're repeating negative patterns. There are people in the home, like I said, repeating negative patterns. And what would you tell someone and I've had this a few times in a few different conversations. Well, why does such and such always do that? And I always tell them, I said, have you looked at how you respond to that situation? Because sometimes it's not the other person, it's us.
Absolutely.
How do we identify, and what are some things that we should do to address some of those negative thoughts and patterns that we want to steer away from?
That's an excellent question, and it's always a good question. That's always a good question. At any time. Part of well, as I answered, I want to start by going back to something that you said that was so key when you started speaking. You were talking about this feeling of what I deserve.
Yes.
That's a huge one right there, and that is such a key part of the answer, or one of the answers to this relationship question. It's what I deserve, what I feel I deserve, and then it's also something we said. I think it was we were talking about it the last time I was on that I want to address also that fits, and that is you had mentioned in the last show that I was on. You were talking about because of all that's happening with the racial unrest and everything, and that's about relationships. That's about relationships also, most definitely. But you had made a point about how as a lot of times Black people will change the way we speak when we're around white people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And at the time I was nodding because people definitely do that. But and after your show, I was like, oh, I wanted to address that again. So fits. It does fit with this. I want to address it because actually, when I think about it, I've never done that. And I know that people do that. And have reason to, because they can feel there's not just feel they're marginalized. Their career may depend on all that. But I was thinking about why I don't do it.
Okay.
And I'll change the way I speak based on my audience in terms of there's more formal speaking. There's when I'm performing, and there's a little more informal, of course, but not based on the race, the color of the skin, and all that. And what I realized is the reason I don't is my thinking is, because I was like, okay, how do I think about it? My thinking is, I value you as a person. My expectation is that you'll value me, and therefore you can meet me where I am, just as I'm willing to meet you where you are. I don't always have to be the one to change something. Let's just bring who we are, kind of thing. And for me, that thinking, it fits with what we're talking about because it has to do with good enough. Are you good enough? And now that does not mean that, I certainly don't have the perfect grammar, but the thing is, neither do they.
Exactly.
So we're all growing. We're all growing. And so it's, are you good enough? What do you deserve? And in terms of relationships, business, husbands, wives, all that stuff, you asked a key question as well when you said, how do you respond? Because communication is a two-way street, right? So I would definitely agree with how do you respond. And then the other thing that I always or often bring to people's attention as well with those same questions is it takes a degree of self-esteem to be able to step to the left. Like, and what I mean by that is like move out of the way a little bit. Move out of the way just a little bit, so that you can look at the person and see the person. And the way they view things, it may be different from you. They may even be wrong, but at least you can't begin to address it until you hear them. And you can't really hear them if you're always seeing and hearing everything through the lens and through the way, well, this is how I do it, and when I was raised, and so you just wrong.
Exactly.
Maybe they're wrong, but the starting place is, well, and just like you said, in terms of communication, let me hear them. So I'll give you a real quick example. There were two people that I know of, a lady and a gentleman, and he kept getting irritated with her because she would keep asking him, to do the same kinds of things. Sounds familiar, right?
Yes.
And he was getting, but in this case, he was doing it every day, cleaning that area of the house or doing his whatever, and so he's like, why do you keep asking? Why do you keep asking? And I said to him, she may not be asking what you think she's asking.
Right.
She's asking you to do the thing, but in her mind, she's not asking you to do that thing. She's asking you to do it differently. Or maybe, in her mind, the way you do. So I think that you have to start with, if it's a work relationship, any relationship, well, let me do like you said, Kim. Let me look at myself.
Yes.
And how I respond. Let me try to better understand what they're saying and how they see it without me filtering everything through the way I experience it. The way I experience it is important, and we'll reintroduce it again. But for the moment, let me hear that person's. And there's one very easy way to do that is to ask them.
Yes.
Like actually ask. Sometimes we one of the reasons we're so frustrated is we literally never actually asked.
And listen for the answer.
Thank you. And we, all those other thoughts come in about well, that's, again, we're judging from our lens. Well, that's ridiculous. I don't have to ask. No, actually, maybe you do. It seems so simple. It seems so obvious. That's a bit obvious. It's so obvious. Clearly, it's not obvious to somebody, which is why the friction continues. So exactly, ask. When we, and careful about you want to start with this because then people feel defensive. You keep it.
Yes.
So ask it in a way that seems more open. Like, for example, I noticed that. Or oftentimes you'll say, or when you ask me, other ways of, when you ask me to do blah, 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 or I noticed that when you want me to do whatever, can you tell me, I know it seems obvious, but I this is what you were talking about, Kim, I might be missing something.
Right.
Just so that we're on the same page, tell me again, when you ask that, or when you're referring, tell me, what do you mean by it? And it's amazing how, yes, sometimes they'll say what you were thinking. Other times they'll say something that you didn't expect.
Exactly.
That they're coming at it from a different way. So I think those are key points. Is don't always assume that they're seeing it and hearing it the way you are, because their background may be different, their expectations may be different, and this happens often too. Sometimes people are dealing with the other person or the last person that they ran into a clash with over this thing, and they're assuming that you're doing the same thing, and you're like, but I'm just but I
exactly.
didn't. But they assume that because of their previous experience.
Exactly.
None of which you'll find out if you don't just ask. Tell me, and like you say, listen. And listen, then you can go, hopefully, then you can take the answers and say, okay, well, you know what? I hear what you're saying. Validating their feelings is important. Because a lot of times people will go straight to, well, what we need to do then, and they don't stop off in the middle with, I hear that. I hear what you're saying. Because so often, for all of us, people are waiting. They want to hear that do you hear me? Do you hear where I'm coming from? And if you say, you may not agree and you may still think they're wrong, but at least this is what helps the communication, brings down those barriers. Tell me how you're viewing that. What is it about what I'm doing that's bothering you so much? Or I asked you to do it and you keep doing it. So when I ask you, how do you see it? What do you think that I mean by it? Or how, and then they answer, or hopefully, or you ask more questions and they say, okay, I see what you're saying. I hear where you're coming from with that, but I still don't understand blah, blah, blah. Why? So you can start a conversation and then talk with them about how, what can we do differently? Now, if it's your children, depending on how young, there may be less negotiation.
Yes, absolutely. Bribery maybe.
Yes, right. But you want them to learn. You want them to know, Yes. So there may be less negotiation, but still there is, when I tell you to do X, I expect it because, I feed you. And you weren't clothes, I pray for you. And it's for your safety. And it's for your blah, blah. You don't, you know this, of course, there's the balance between teaching life lessons along the way, and so they can see why, as well as on the other side of it is, I don't have to give you a dissertation as to why I'm asking you to pick up your socks. I need you to pick up your socks.
We've had that conversation in my house.
A lot of people have. I'm gonna need you to pick up your socks.
We had a conversation about not living in a messy house and why that wasn't a good thing.
Yeah, see, there's teaching. That's right.
And then by the third time, it was like, look, dude, I said pick your socks up. Okay, enough is enough. Just
That's
pick
right.
your socks up.
That's right. Just I've given you the reasons. Exactly. It's just a respect thing, and you're modeling behavior. We model behavior. So without naming names, there have been times when I have, in terms of modeling behavior, when I have said, but you know what? Obviously, take the socks and dump them in the middle. Let's add to the socks that you think are okay to have in there. Let's put them undershirts with it. Okay. Now, so is that what you? Okay.
Yeah.
Magically after that, things. So communication works in a variety of ways. Get people to see. I think also one last thing about that, as far as it's a human thing. We see things through our own lens.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me, or that's not the worst thing on my list. So I know you'd like me to, but it's not that big a deal.
Right.
They're telling you it's not that big a deal to you. So we have to help people learn to listen to us by listening to them and saying, you know what, I would like this respect in return. And circling back, last thing I'll say, circling back to what you started with when you said, again, that key point of what you deserve. And even to your kids, you know what, I deserve better than this. I work very hard to make sure you have, oh, God, I love you and everything. At the very least, you love mom. Now go do it.
Exactly.
I'm not asking, I'm telling you, but but in relationships, business and otherwise, we often don't feel that we can say, I feel disrespected. I feel that, I would like to, business relationships, personal relationships, whatever. So, yeah. So all of that.
Thank you, Dr. Angela Celeste May. You gave us so much to chew on.
Thank you.
So we have to be empathetic to one another. We need to ask the question and then sit back and listen.
Absolutely.
For the answer. And if we don't understand it and need more clarity, ask additional questions.
That's right.
But it is about relationships, understanding what we deserve, understanding what we will accept and what we won't, and having honest conversations about that. And, it's interesting when you said that, because I thought, this is what's happening in America. We're having an honest conversation about how African Americans are treated in this country.
Yes.
And it's about time. But at the end of the day, God knew about this yesterday. That is going to be my new saying. I love that. God.
Oh, mom, that's my mom saying. I'll tell her that you said it to me.
Please do. God knew about it yesterday. Scripture tells us to think on things above. Yes. That means to think on things that are good. You have to control your thoughts, because from your heart, these are the things that will flow. And so if we are speaking bad things into existence, as you said, which I believe in that, because I think that it is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely.
People will say, if I say my kid is bad, and then when your kid does something, you're always pointing to what the negative things that they do. And I always tell people, I say, if you're feeling down, if you are feeling sad, write down a list of things that you can be grateful for.
Yes.
And focus on those things. Yes, things are bad. Things are bad for everybody. There is always something in someone's life that could be better. But look at how many things that you have to be grateful for, and maybe your perspective will change.
Yes. And I would add too, my husband and I, my mom, we all do gratefulness journals.
Okay.
So that, this journaling, which is very valuable, but specifically, start your day or have a, last thing before you go to sleep. What are you grateful for?
Exactly.
And then go back and look. So yeah,
absolutely. So we are keeping hope alive, as the Reverend Jesse Jackson would say, because God still sits on the throne. He knew about it yesterday, and he was with us yesterday. He is with us today, and he will be with us tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Tell us, Dr. Angela Celeste May, where we can reach you and how we can get your book and your CD.
Oh, what? Thank you for asking. I
You're
appreciate that.
welcome.
Well, first of all, you can one way you can reach me is at my company website, AMA and Associates Incorporated. That is on the psychology side of what I do. The website is amassociates.com, amassociates.com. So you can find me there. You can see my music career, like a lot of stuff I'm doing on Reverb Nation. That's REVERB as in boy nation / Angela Celeste May. You can get my book, Freedom. I was going to call it No Limits because that was the name of my first album. But Freedom, you can get that from, where can you get it from? Apple. Is it called Apple? Amazon. You got Amazon. Apple in my head. You got Apple in my head. Amazon. Sorry, you can get that from Amazon. Order from Amazon. It is in, should be still, I believe. Yes, hard copy, soft copy, and an ebook. What else? Oh, and my CDs. You can get from cdbaby.com. And go to Angela Celeste May. The first album is called No Limits. You see, I have a theme here. There's a theme. No Limits. And the second album, which came out at the end of 2017, is called Reintroducing the Lady. So there's that. A lot, just real quickly, a lot of my writing, the music that I create, is it's got like multiple meanings in the lyrics, and the music is often multi-layered. So the Reintroducing the Lady is because I did not expect 10 years between albums, so didn't expect that. But it also means reintroducing the concept of a lady.
Yes.
And that lady doesn't mean you're weak in any way. You are strong, you are powerful, you are handling business, running the world and everything else, but you do it with class and integrity. Mm-hmm. So it has that, kind of double meaning there. And you can also find me on Facebook as well, Angela Celeste May, or Dr. Angela Celeste May. And one last thing I'll say, that's my YouTube channel. And I use my whole name for everything, Angela Celeste May. But I draw you to that as well because I have, I've got a library of vocal quick tips and like 52 videos on lots of different vocal quick tips. But that's not just for vocalists. It's geared towards vocalists, public speakers, poets, anyone who uses their teachers, anyone who uses their voice, as in a creative way or as a profession, and for other musicians as well. And also my official music videos are there as well. And I'm about to shoot another one in August. So
congratulations!
Thank you very much. So I'm excited about all that, and I'm very blessed that everything I do, I get to we do what we love, and I produce the music videos as well and co-direct them. So I just love doing all that stuff. So
excellent. See, that's why we love having you on the show, because you are a wealth of talent. You bring so much information. We adore you. Thank you so much.
I love being on. I always tell you, you're just you're a wonderful interviewer. She has a beautiful, warm smile. It just makes you want to open up and like, there's more.
That's why we love you. Well, we can't wait until you come back, and we're going to talk more mental health next month on the Kim B. Davis Show. Thank you all for watching and tuning in. We hope that you will join us on the next episode of the Kim B. Davis Show. And remember, be magnificent.